You're listening to the Vint podcast, where we bring you interviews and stories from around the world of wine and spirits. From winemakers and critics to sommeliers and master distillers, we'll explore the people and businesses who are instrumental in shaping the future of today's food and drinks culture. Enjoy the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Vint podcast. My name is Brady, joined once again in the studio by Billy Galenko. How are you doing, Billy? How was your weekend?
It was very good. Very good. It's a beautiful time of year out here. God, I always say that, but in LA, the fall is actually nice because it gets cool at nighttime, but it's nice and warm during the day still. So it's been nice just being outside this weekend. How about you?
Nice, yeah. Yeah, we had a friend's wedding this past weekend. Beautiful property up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So that was a lot of fun. And yeah, the temperature was great. It's that time of year where you can do shorts and long sleeves and feel really good out here. So at least for me. And in terms of, let's see, what do we had some good wine at the wedding. I was in charge of the alcohol. I was in charge of making sure that we had what they wanted and that they had enough. So that was a little bit stressful because, didn't want anything to run out. But it seemed like it was perfect and got everything for really good value, which was fun, trying to find some really good product for an affordable price to keep costs low. Yeah, I think the big hit drink was the warm spice cider with Hennessy. That was the move of the night for most folks. And it was a Caribbean, partially Caribbean type wedding, so the Hennessy was flowing. That was the big beverage.
Nice. Yeah, you can't really beat the warm spice cider, so I think that's very true. No, I had a similarly quality weekend. We just did some of our favorite things. I had a lot of wines by the glass at a couple of our favorite wine spots. One of my favorite ones, I think I mentioned it before, just half glasses. So it's nice you're able just to try a bunch of things. I normally just ask them what's weird. I still get a kick out of it that one of the places we go has field recordings on tap. And I always just think about our interview with Andrew Jones about how we've tried them in every format, and in the can, in the bottle, and on tap, and it's always worse on tap. He's like, people keep asking for it. So every time I see it, I'm like, well, there it is. It's a worse form, but it's still good. It's that good to begin with.
What were they pouring? What was it? Which one?
Which field recordings? I can't remember. It was just one of their baseline oranges. They have fanciful names for the oranges. Yeah, it might have just been skins.
Sure. No, those are great wines. I imagine that it's probably still way more than tolerable on tap. So
yeah, for sure.
And actually a good intro when you're talking about the orange wines, that's a good intro for beer drinkers. It might feel exactly the same coming out of the tap. It's a little hazy in color. It's a little amber orange sort of color. It seems like the perfect introduction.
Yeah, well, it's right there. This place does have some beers. It's right next to it too. So I think that makes sense. Speaking of being perfect for things, I think orange wines could actually pair really well with a lot of Thanksgiving food. What are you doing for Thanksgiving? And maybe do you have a favorite food that you like to have that's like a must, or maybe do top three because nobody can just pick one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If I'm making Thanksgiving or if providing a substantial amount of the food, there's definitely going to be something with crab. Usually like a crab imperial.
You're so Maryland.
Yeah, I know. Something like that would be good. But like a heavy crab dish. So something really rich. Maybe an oaked white wine if I'm going that way. But this Thanksgiving, I am not in charge of anything, I don't believe. And I'll be solo. My wife has to work. She's in the medical field. I'll probably bring a few wines and maybe some whiskeys and sit with the aunts and uncles.
Nice. So for us, my favorite foods are, I don't know, I think in order, I really have stuffing on the brain all of a sudden. So I will go stuffing. Oh, wow. I'm more of a dark meat dark meat turkey kind of guy. So that, and my mom makes some pretty good like sweet potato, like whipped sweet potatoes with like brown sugar and pecan stuff on top. So I think I'll go with those three as my foods.
Sounds like we're heading down the Zinfandel route.
Yeah. And then we always go to visit my dad's family in southwestern Pennsylvania outside of Pittsburgh. Done that every year except for a couple my whole life, which is always fun. And this year, my fiance is joining for the first time. And so that'll be really fun to show her the old Galenko
Nice.
tradition, which will be nice.
Yeah, you won't be far from me, actually. I'll be in like Central Maryland, North Central. So we'll probably be less than a couple hours away.
Nice. Then we'll be prepping for our retreat here in a couple weeks where we'll be even less than a couple hours away. We'll be down the hall from each other.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, so for the wine of what we're drinking this weekend, or the wine of the week, it is also Thanksgiving themed. It's a Beaujolais Nouveau Day on Thursday, on the 16th of November. It's the day that Beaujolais Nouveau is actually allowed to be released. So Beaujolais will be in the news. I had a really good 2019 Morgon this weekend that kind of reminded me of my love of Beaujolais. I hadn't had any in a while. So for those who are new to Beaujolais, Beaujolais is technically part of Burgundy. It's just south of the Maconnais, down that way. Technically part of Burgundy, but it's really classified as its own. It has its own cru system and its own classification. So there's three main broad types of Beaujolais. There's Beaujolais that basically can be just general Beaujolais, can come from anywhere within the region. And then there's Beaujolais Village, which is a step more narrow. It can basically come from any vineyard in a certain area around these qualified villages. So basically a village can be classified and then they can produce village level Beaujolais. So the grapes can come from multiple villages, I believe. And then last but not least is the most important, and the one I tend to drink the most, are the cru of Beaujolais. They're basically certain villages, designated areas around these villages that are designated as cru. There's 10 of them in no particular order. They are Bruy, Chenas, Cherouble, Côte de Bruy, Fleury, Julianas, Morgon, Moulin à Vent, which means windmill, Régny, and Saint Amour. I'll say a few of my favorites are Fleury, which tends to be I find them very concentrated, the best ones, but also very floral and a little bit more delicate. And there's Morgon, which I had this weekend, that I personally tend to get more like spice from, has a bit more body than the Fleury. And then Moulin Vent are also always great. They're really structured. Those ones can really age for a long time and be really good wine. So they're all really how Beaujolais is, easy drinking, red fruit forward. I will say that the cru have some body and some tannin. It's closer to like a Pinot Noir in a way, more than what people might think of as, Beaujolais Nouveau, which is just fruity, easy drinking. The cru really can become a true wine that can actually age and show really well, and deserves a little bit more respect than some of the just Beaujolais Nouveau that people just pound on a regular basis.
Yeah, but those are all wines that the profile stands up well to a Thanksgiving meal, for sure. Like you said, from your maybe an aromatic stuffing to your turkey.
I recommend everybody still go and get the crus or the more aged Beaujolais rather than just the Nouveau. But it's also out. It's fun that everybody celebrates a wine on a certain day. So go ahead and get that as well, as it comes out on November 16th this year.
Be sure to stay attuned to those Black Friday wine deals that you might find on online retail wine platforms that can certainly offer some good opportunities to buy. And speaking of those online platforms, we have Adam Lapierre, who is our and director of wine and the leader of the Vint marketplace, which is our new online retail platform. We've talked about it a little bit in the past, I believe, in the spring when we announced the marketplace. But it's becoming a major part of our business and will be in the future. And so we have Adam on today to pull back the curtain a little bit on why we launched the marketplace, how it stands out from other online retail platforms in the US, and sort of the significance of the type of assets that we're able to offer at, pretty exciting prices to the average US consumer. I know you work closely with Adam. Is there anything you want to say about the marketplace before we get into the interview?
No, I think it was a great interview. We let Brady lead the way with the questions, which is nice for me I'm so close to it on a regular basis. It was nice to hear some questions and actually answers that I hadn't really even thought of on a day-to-day basis. So I thought it was a really great and insightful interview and gave a good overview of the marketplace.
Cool. Yep, we have Adam here. Be sure to check out the marketplace and all that we have to offer there, both wine and whiskey. And without further ado, here's Adam Lapierre. Hey, Adam, thanks for coming down the hall to the podcast studio and spending some time with us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, guys. Happy to join you. Happy to be with you.
Yeah, Adam's a loyal listener to the podcast. He was actually our first listener, so he's been around a while and been on the podcast a few times. But excited to chat with you about the marketplace today. It was, I think, probably something that you had in mind since you first started with us, bringing a marketplace type platform to Vint. Is that right?
I think I wouldn't say that it was that we had a clear idea of that, but certainly we obviously we want the most optionality when it comes to exiting Vint assets, and certainly understood the price dislocation between Europe and the United States as a potential opportunity to help to realize highest possible returns for the sale of Vint assets. With that goal in mind, I think over the last year and a few months, the idea of a marketplace became more interesting.
Yeah. I'm not sure most of our listeners should know by now, if they've been listening for several episodes, that Vint is a wine and spirits investment platform. Obviously, we do these podcasts where we just talk with producers and critics and anyone in the wine and spirits industry. But the core of our business is offering securitized wine and spirits assets for investment. And so this marketplace really allows us to be vertically integrated, right? Bring in assets for investment and then later sell them through our marketplace, our online retail platform, as a channel for exit. And so, Adam, when you think about other online wine spirits retail platforms out there are a number of large players in the US and some even larger ones, I think, in the UK, retailers in general. What stands out about the approach that our new retail platform takes versus some of the other options that folks have to buy high-end wine and spirits?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's pretty unique about our platform is that we are solely focused on collectible and investment grade wine and spirits. Typically a wine retailer, a brick and mortar retailer, or an online e-commerce shop would have a pretty big range of wines going from $10 a bottle up to several $1,000s a bottle. And just because the nature of our investment business, of course, we thought it was most prudent to be ultra focused and really target our offering to a very particular segment of collectors and consumers. So in that regard, I think it's pretty unique. The sheer size and breadth of our offering, it in part as a function of all of the great Vint assets that we're managing, but also through some of the great relationships we've built with suppliers and the great network we have, has really given us the opportunity to bring a sort of an unprecedented mix of collectible investment grade wines and spirits. We've got in excess of 15,000 unique wine and spirits on the marketplace at a value, a retail value in excess of $70 million. So it's pretty unbelievable when you look at the landscape in the United States, the quality of our assortment relative to the competitive set.
Yeah, I think as a frequent buyer on some of these online retail platforms for premium, mainly premium wines, but also looking through and at times trying to find good pricing on luxury sort of category assets as well. One of the big distinctions between different platforms, it seems, in the US is ones that primarily focus on, or maybe not primarily, well, ones who have a focus on private client stock or maybe like consignment stock. I'm not sure sort of how it is. I'm thinking like Benchmark, perhaps, who I know buys private sellers and then sells assets. And then others who maybe focus more heavily on pre-arrival stock or stock that is existing in Europe or the UK at this time. We've taken the approach of we have our stock from our investment vehicles, which we're holding both in the US and abroad. And then we also have pre-arrival stock, but no private client stock. Is that right?
Yeah, at the moment that is correct. We're basically taking the same sourcing strategy for the retail inventory that we do for the investment inventory, which is really looking for wine where we've got total confidence in the provenance and how these wines have been stored since release, because we see that as obviously a big benefit to clients who are shopping on the platform, not necessarily needing to even question some of those things. So in essence, everything that we've got on our platform is in pristine condition. Anything that's being sold by the case is being sold in its original case. And the vast majority of it hasn't even really moved. It's been in one warehouse since it was released and been professionally stored. So we have total confidence in the quality of our offering.
Yeah, it was a cool moment this past week. Wine Spectator announced their I guess they announced their top 100 wines of the year, but they focused on their top 10. And every year, sort of the number one wine has a huge leap in consumer interest, especially on online platforms. And we were able to acquire some of that stock, I know. And I think I picked up a few bottles, my my first purchase on the Vint marketplace. And I noticed that we were selling those bottles, not in case quantity like most of the inventory, but as single bottles. I think you probably see single bottle sales on most online retail platforms.
Yep.
Whereas on the Vint marketplace, many of the assets are sold in 3, 6, and 12 case quantities. Is there a difference in the presentation of the assets or provenance or any of those factors if someone's buying single bottles versus case quantities on the marketplace?
No, at the moment, there's really no difference. And in fact, those wines would be shipped from Europe to the US in their original cases, and then ultimately removed from those cases as they're being picked to ship out to the individual customers. So when you receive your bottles, obviously, but otherwise, no real difference. We do have some single bottles that we might acquire and ship from Europe. And in most instances, those are even single bottle cases, but there are some instances where we might offer some loose bottles. But as it relates to how those have been stored, where they're coming from, it's the same network, very tight network of stockholding merchants, producers, negociants, that really have impeccable reputations. We know stand by the quality of their product. We know have line of sight into their client reserves. And so, yeah, no real difference there. That this could evolve over time as the marketplace grows. Certainly there may be some opportunities and some interest from our customers in acquiring some wines that are coming from private collectors. So when we think about Napa mailing list wines, for example, a lot of those wines just end up in the hands of collectors, and that's just a reality of it. So I do see a world in the future where we may acquire wines from private collections and offer those on our marketplace. But we're always going to endeavor to really distinguish that as a unique sourcing channel, so the customer understands that when they're making their purchasing decisions. And certainly it doesn't change our standards around the expectations around the condition of the storage, the level of due diligence we're going to put on making sure that the wine's been stored properly and that the condition is pristine.
Yeah, taking a little pivot over back to the conditioning we loosely referenced, but I want to go back to our network of partners without giving away our list here. Can you talk about what the importance of I think having you join the company and having many years of working with folks and having relationships, especially in Europe, being able to bring that, what is the value of having kind of these known entities as working partners, both say in the UK and then France? How does that add value and confidence to our buying and allowing us to add value to consumers here?
Well, a lot of the market in Europe for fine wine is based on the broking model. So everyone is trying to minimize the amount of capital they have tied up in inventory and is trying to leverage other folks' stock. Ultimately, you want to drill down the value chain as far as you can to get to the primary source of supply. Obviously, you don't want to pay markups for brokers. So having those relationships with the folks that are actually stockholders helps you more confidently sort of get to that primary source and get to that lowest potential cost for these assets. The other thing that's obviously very important is being able to deliver what the customer has purchased. And if we were working with brokers that then need to go to a primary source, and once we make our order, then they need to go and arrange their own purchase, that just increases the potential for points of failure and suboptimal customer experience. So working with stockholders means we know that the wine's there. We know the condition. We don't have to ask a lot of these questions. And it just makes for a more seamless process, both for us as a business and obviously for the end customer.
Yeah, some consumers might not be used to, or listeners might not be used to buying wines on pre-arrival. Can you just explain that process, what it means to buy wine on pre-arrival, what the process is like for customers, coordinating final delivery of the assets once they actually arrive in the US, and just how we manage that as the marketplace?
Yeah. I guess I could start by saying it is a unique model. And unfortunately, it is a model that has been subject to abuse at times. There have been a few high profile business failures wherein the retailers were selling wines on pre-arrival at unbelievably low prices. In certain instances, these were intentional. I think from the beginning, intentional lapses in presentation and judgment. In others, I think as the businesses started struggling, it became more difficult for them to fulfill their obligations. And there's some high-profile cases where retailers were selling wines on pre-arrival and ultimately didn't have the wine to deliver to the customer. So I think for folks that are seasoned collectors, there's probably a healthy degree of fear or pessimism around like new players that are selling wines on pre-arrival. That's one thing that we're very cognizant of, and we try to mitigate. And obviously, the best way to mitigate around that is giving confidence in Vint marketplace and Vint as a business, delivering as quickly as possible, and really being as communicative as possible to the customer. That being said, for folks that are new to the process, why is it interesting? It's interesting because there's not as much sort of depth of mature wines in the United States available for sale as there is in Europe. Buying wines directly from Europe gives us access to a much deeper pool of interesting wines that are ready to drink. It also enables us to offer some of these wines at a relative value to how they might buy these wines if they were purchasing from a traditional brick and mortar retailer that was buying those wines from a distributor. We can basically just get more efficient with the supply chain and pass that savings on to the customer. And again, we have greater line of sight into the provenance of those wines. So again, if you wanted to buy an 82 Lafite from a retailer here in the United States, odds are that wine spent some time in somebody's cellar. Now that cellar could have perfect storage conditions, but it could also be a wine fridge that broke down for a summer, or who knows. So it introduces more questions. Whereas again, if we're buying these wines from Europe, we tend to know exactly where they came from, where they've been stored, and we know that they've been professionally stored since release. So we have just greater confidence in the quality. The way that it works is if a customer places an order for a pre-arrival wine, we start to organize that shipment immediately. That wine could be located in a warehouse in France, could be located in a bonded warehouse in the UK. We centralize all that stock at a facility also in the UK, inspect the inventory, make sure that it meets our expectations around condition. We consolidate all of the pre-arrivals into a monthly shipment. So we ship that stock over in containers via ocean freight. The containers are temperature controlled. The wine lands in the United States, goes into our import warehouse, gets offloaded, gets inspected, received, put away, and then we contact the customer to organize delivery. Our facility is also temperature controlled, and we offer the customers the ability to store the wine with us for a period of time if it's not optimal for them to take delivery. But once they're received, they're more or less available for immediate shipment. Another thing that we don't do, obviously, is just ship out wines indiscriminately. We don't want wines exposed to the elements. We don't want a FedEx driver to try to make a delivery 3 or 4 times or any of that stuff that's not, it just introduces more risk, especially with the types of wines that we're selling. We want to treat these wines with respect from end to end. So again, not only is the provenance important, but the every element of the supply chain and every step of the process, we try to take a lot of care.
Sorry, Billy, one more. Just on like last mile delivery for our highest end assets, that 82 Lafitte, is that being delivered by a FedEx or UPS driver at last? And if so, are there any additional steps that we take to try and avoid the situation that you're talking about? Yeah, I've had wines taken back to New Jersey for a few days and then tried to redeliver, and that's just never a good feeling. How do we mitigate against that for the top assets that people might be more nervous?
Yeah, I think most important thing is obviously we check the weather, right? So if a wine is delayed for a day or 2 days, what does that mean? Again, nobody likes to think about the wine being sloshed around in the back of a truck for a few days, but if the temperatures are reasonably fair for the wine to be exposed to kind of the elements, then that's that gives us a little more comfort. Obviously, with common carrier shipping, there really is no sort of last mile temperature control option. So for us, it's trying to get the wine in the hands of the consumer as quickly as possible when we're using a common carrier. So an expedited shipping, like a priority overnight, where gets picked up at 2 or 3 p.m. and delivered to the customer before 10 a.m. the next day. That sort of increases our level of comfort around exposure to the elements. We do have some interesting solutions for certain markets that give us, for example, in the greater New York area, we have the option to do van deliveries, temperature controlled Sprinter vans. And so that's a nice option for folks that are in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts. And we can also sort of like tailor a temperature controlled solution. For example, we could use the van delivery to deliver to a storage facility in New York or New Jersey, and then piggyback onto their consolidation. So we have options. They're just not terribly efficient from a timing perspective, and certainly they can add some costs. But yeah, we've done some creative things, and again, I think our mission is to get the wines in the hand of the customer as quickly as possible.
On the note of selection, I've been thinking about it, not really thinking about it. I've been noticing as we've been going through that we do offer a lot of the big names that everybody knows, but it seems like there is a lot of interest in some of these more obscure wines. So like with our breadth of inventory, we're able to have these wines that some people may not find. Maybe it's like an obscure Chenin from the Loire, or some Jura, or some obscure Italian wine. Have you been surprised or interested in some of the, or at least taken pride in the ability for us to not only offer these really high-end wines, but some of these kind of niche, almost like cult-like wines that people can't find elsewhere? I think that's been really interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I think there have been certain categories and producers where the number of customers that have expressed interest in those wines has definitely surprised me. And yeah, if I was a buyer and I had a limited budget to spend on my inventory, there are plenty of things that I've seen us sell that I wouldn't normally be top of mind for me. So I think to me, that is a really interesting benefit of our platform and our relationships, that we're able to satisfy a much broader range of consumers than I might have expected. The other thing that I think is really interesting about that is, again, we are, I think, touching a slightly younger consumer with our offering through that breadth of assortment. It's great because the folks that might ultimately gravitate towards Lafitte or DRC or high-end Curacao whiskeys probably didn't start out drinking those things, right? So I think the long tail of our assortment is really attractive to consumers that are highly engaged, but maybe kind of earlier in their journey and maybe have less disposable income in a relative sense to the folks that might purchase some of those wines that I mentioned a moment ago.
Yeah, I think what stands out when you first go to the platform is the sheer number of rare and luxury sort of collectible class, especially whiskeys. There's a fair amount of wines as well, but some of the whiskeys on the platform are, really staggering in terms of both their age and frankly their price. Can you just speak to some of that stock? I guess the difference in the way that we think about selling on a retail sort of online platform stock that might be over 60, 70, 80, $100,000 plus. Is there a different approach at all? I assume that the customer is different, their expectations are a little bit different, but not every platform has several $100,000 plus assets, that luxury collectibles that folks could pick up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a pretty crazy assortment when you look at it. And I struggle to think of any seller in the United States that has, especially on the whiskey front, that has the rarities that we've got on our platform. It is pretty cool when you see it. Yeah, I think the expectation there is it's like a shop window. You're advertising that you have it. And ultimately, a lot of those things get transacted directly with the prospective buyer. Now, certainly there are folks that come in onto the shop and might put in pretty substantial orders, which is always interesting and exciting. But as it relates to those rarities, normally there's a process where folks want to understand a bit more about where it's coming from, where it's been stored, et cetera, and how quickly they can get it. The idea is to really showcase this, right? To help reinforce our approach and hopefully start those kinds of conversations.
Sort of alongside like maybe white glove type of service or more sort of concierge for top clients. I know the platform's we just launched in the spring of this past year, but thinking about producers in the US and even abroad who maybe primarily or only, maybe exclusively sell wines through an allocation list or direct from their winery and don't use distributors. Is there sort of, if someone were to come to us at the marketplace and say, there's a producer in Greece and I've had their wines on a trip there, could you help me acquire some of them? I've never been able to find someone who could get those wines for me. Is that sort of a service that you envision being able to offer in the future, or have we already held hands with somebody to try and accomplish that?
Yeah, we've done that. We do that pretty regularly. Again, it is pretty wild that even with over 15,000 wines that you don't have everything that people are going to want. But it's great that because we do offer that service. Billy and myself man the phones and email. And if there's something that's not on the platform and somebody's looking for it, we're happy to make an effort to dig deep and see if we can find them. In fact, Billy we were talking earlier, somebody wanted a couple wines that they couldn't find on the platform, and he found 15 cases. And so this person's very happy. Yeah. We really take a hospitality mindset with the marketplace and love engaging with folks directly. And again, the more that we do that, then the more they understand that we're really fine wine people and really focused on a high level service, which is what this type of client, I think, expects, and they should expect it.
Yeah, the interesting part there that I didn't expect as well is, so I guess for some listeners, this might not be a surprise, but for me, just talking with more folks, is I know people have really big sellers, but sometimes the extent to the size of some of these sellers and the amount people buy per year is always interesting. So sometimes people are looking for wine and they actually get direct allocations from the producer. I had one person call and he was saying he got some DRC allocations and he actually got more than like some of the distributors that he was talking to or the people that he was talking to trying to buy wine from. And he was very happy with that. But then he also wanted to get more. And there were certain wines that he couldn't necessarily find, or vintages. I think it's interesting. It's not just wines that people can't find, but it might be the volume that they're looking for, or certain back vintages that are a little more difficult to find for people to complete their cellar.
Yeah. I remember this story. There's a club, a fine wine club called Fee Kofi, which is they have I don't know how many billionaires in this club, but in essence, they have relationships. The club has relationships directly with top producers, and the typical allocation process for these fine wines is you get the top wine, but you also get an allocation of some of the other wines, right? And you're expected to buy the other wines as well. It's not necessarily always explicitly stated, but you support the base, and you get access to the top wines. And one of the clients, I heard this anecdote where one of the clients of Ficofi only wanted to drink Romani Conti and didn't want to buy any Latache or RSV or anything else. He wanted to drink Romani Conti every day for his life. And so, yeah, I think
don't we all? Yeah. That's an interesting dynamic. What about our, how is it that we can go and find those wines, whereas someone who has maybe they have their own, maybe they have work with a private sommelier or some broker. They have maybe relationships directly with producers. How is it that we're able to then go and find something that just can't be found elsewhere? Is it just different channels, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think there are a few different layers of the trade, and we touch a few of them. Again, we've got a core group of merchants that are most important, I would say, from the standpoint of volume of supply. But we've got relationships in multiple markets with merchants that are still very good, but maybe not as big and have more boots on the ground. So we've got a few players in France that we work with, some in other parts of Europe. And yeah, we're able to drill pretty deep if we need to make an effort.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, I, for one, is obviously a little bit biased, but love the way that the marketplace is set up. Really super easy to navigate. I think that the quality and breadth of assets, like Billy said, from regions and sub-regions that you don't often see stock on online retail platforms, is really cool to see that. And wanting to, as we wrap up, just get your perspective on what we mentioned earlier, which was a wine that was super popular for us on the marketplace this last week. Are you familiar with the Wine Spectator Wine of the Year, the Argiano Brunello di Montalcino 2018 vintage?
Yeah, it's not one that it's not top of mind for me as it relates to Brunello. I certainly know the producer. I've had the wine a few times, but there are other producers that I have consumed with more frequency for sure. But it is always an exciting moment. Obviously, the country, the specific wine varies from year to year. So there are some years where the top wine is not something that we really have access to, but it is a race. So it was very fun. It's great. When I know that the wine's coming out, I'm on the computer at 6 a.m. kind of waiting for the announcement to be released. And as soon as it is, I'm out racing ahead of the competition to secure as much stock as I can. So it always introduces a bit of fun, and I'm quite competitive in this regard. We were able to secure a good amount of volume based on the limited stock that was available in the market at that time. Then if you look at Wine Searcher, pretty much within an hour, I would guess most of the Wine Searcher listings were sold. Those retailers were already sold out. So it's great to follow on with an offer to our clients and be able to extend that to them on Friday, the day that the announcement was made. And then we had additional inventory that was available for folks that were current Vint Marketplace clients. So on Saturday, we got a good amount of traffic and purchases in as well. So it was a great opportunity to introduce the platform to new folks. And I'm still on the hunt for more. So looking to lock down another notch.
Yeah, one of the reasons I asked you, I don't know if you remember this, but last year, the wine of the year was Schrader's Double Diamond label, I think the 2019 cab. And I think about 2 weeks before they made the announcement, you pointed the wine out to Billy and I. We were talking about value wine from Napa. And you said you guys should pick up this wine. It's like benchmark, great value. Just you had a lot of great things to say about it. Did you know that wine was that just coincidence, or do you have some kind of inside track on the dealings at behind the desks at Wine Searcher?
Well, I don't have a paid informant. That was totally coincidence. I think that wine was on an MW exam last year, if memory serves. So that kind of put it on my radar. And then I tasted it and I was like, yeah, this is textbook Napa, but at a reasonable price.
Well, what was funny is I think Wine Searcher gave it a 93 or 94 or something on the score, but then it got Wine of the Year. I think largely because it's a great value wine. So it won that top spot for being great value, but then tripled in price over the next weeks after it was announced. So I just think that's really funny.
Yeah, that's right. It's one of the few, certainly the 100-point scores from critics can move the needle on price, but it's one of those moments that I think is unique in that it drives way more consumer interest when it's released and in the short term than anything else, any other like wine publication. It does creates a lot of excitement.
I don't know if you're at liberty to speak to any of this, but are these lists pay to play?
I don't think they are. No, I don't think they are. I wouldn't know in any case, but no.
Yeah.
I think they try to cycle through the major regions with some regularity. And if you look at the previous listings, you'll notice that they do take they kind of cycle through countries, but also wine styles. So that's where that's the extent that I can game the system, is trying to figure out, well, what are the potential countries that might be in play here. And we played the game last year where we were looking at the wines that might fit the criteria. And I don't think we got anywhere close when we were guessing.
Yeah, I think I was a year off. I think or maybe you guessed Brunello last year. Somebody did. But what do you think about them? I thought it was not odd, but just interesting that they made the announcement on CNBC, something that was kind of like a business type show. Do you think that was just because they knew who the audience of that show is? Or I just thought that was a weird place maybe for a Wine Spectator to announce things.
Yeah, I saw the video. I didn't know, or I saw that there was a video. I didn't know that that's when they made the official announcement. Is that right? Is that the first time that it was publicized?
I think so. When I Googled it, that was the first thing that came up, is they announced the Wine of the Year. So I think they made that announcement, then it was immediately published across everywhere else.
Well, yeah, I didn't. I was watching their site and basically refreshing like a maniac. That's where I saw it. But yeah, good tip. Maybe next year we'll make sure I'm tuned into that. Yeah, price on that one was I think the lowest price was when it first came out was just under $60. Now it looks like it's around $90. So a 50% increase in a week. That's retail pricing. So pretty interesting how it does move the needle.
It says in 1988, the 1985 Lynch Bage won the Wine of the Year for Wine Spectator. Just baffling that it hasn't won since then. It got number 3 this year, but
yeah, that was another one where we had a little spike in demand when the Lynch Bage came out. Yeah, I think the night we were focused on that with the Vint collections, the Bordeaux values 18, 19, and 20. Right. Just quality to price seems still pretty nuts with some of these Bordeaux producers. Glad to have that validated by the Wine Spectator.
Awesome. Billy, do you have anything else?
No, I like hearing you ask the questions, because I feel like I'm so close to this day to day that I don't even know what to ask. So it's been nice to listen, and I've learned more of Adam's perspective from a higher 360 view. So I think it has been really interesting. I hope our listeners think so too.
Yeah, Billy's down in the warehouse on the forklift, packing boxes, taking calls. Yeah. So if you hear beeping in the background, it's just the forklift and outside Billy's office. Awesome. Well, thanks, Adam. Yeah, thanks for pioneering this new arm of the Vint business, and appreciate all that you're doing to help the investment side, but also provide a lot of value to collectors and enthusiasts.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. That was our interview with Adam Lapierre and talking about our excellent Vint marketplace. I hope everybody goes and checks it out. Hopefully, if you had any questions about the marketplace before, this episode helped answer them. But if you have further questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can either email me or Adam directly at Billy or Adam at vintmarketplace.com, or you can also reach us at support@vintmarketplace.com, and either he or I or somebody from the team will get back to you as soon as possible. We'll be back next week with an interview with Julia Harding, who is co-editor with Jancis Robinson and a couple other members of the team to create the Oxford Companion to Wine, which the new edition just came out this fall. So get excited for that interview. And we will be back with our episode next week. Cheers.
To check out our current offerings and to sign up for the Vint platform, find us at www.vint.co. That's www.vint.co. For questions, comments, or feedback on the Vint podcast, please email us at support@vint.co. Vint and VV Markets are offering securities pursuant to Regulation A. Our offering circular as amended can be found on the SEC website. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Investments such as those on the Vint platform are speculative and involve substantial risks to consider before investing. We may provide communication that may contain certain forward-looking statements that are subject to various risks and uncertainties. Information provided in any communications, including this podcast, is not legal, business, or tax advice. All prospective investors should consult a legal, tax, or business advisor concerning the subject matter of any communications and any offering.